all heard the term toxic workplace culture, but it's not always yelling bosses or public shaming. Sometimes it shows up in the most subtle ways. It shows up in the quiet. It shows up in meeting after meeting after meeting. It shows up in the ways that we go home and complain to our partners about how hard the day was or how the burdens of the job are starting to get to us. So I want to share with you 7 signs that your workplace might be toxic. And I'll tell you how I know, because I'm Chrysta Wilson. I'm the founder and the CEO of Wilson & Associates Coaching and Consulting. And for the last 17 years, I've been working with clients across industries, across sectors, helping them figure out how do we create better workplaces where our people can thrive. So let me tell you, I have helped detox many a workplace culture. So let's dig right in. Let me tell you 7 signs that your workplace might be toxic. Sign number 1, people hesitate to speak up. How about this? Have you ever been in a meeting and people are quiet? They're not speaking up. They're very disengaged. And so maybe you think, all right, I'm leading the meeting. People aren't speaking. We can get out early. Now, sometimes people being quiet in a meeting has to do with their learning style or their neurotype, or maybe the meeting's boring and poorly designed and there's nothing for people to say. But sometimes low engagement has to do with people being afraid to speak up. The term for that is psychological safety. And ultimately, what it means is that we are nervous or afraid to participate because if we speak up, if we speak out, if we offer our ideas, if we go on a limb to offer some innovative thinking, there might be retaliation or retribution. We might be iced out or in some other way experience some kind of retaliation that doesn't feel good or that might stifle our career. So it's better, some might say, to just stay quiet. So if you notice people in your next meeting being very quiet, that might be a sign that your workplace might have just a hint of toxicity. Sign number 2 that your workplace might be toxic, there's a culture of overwork. Now, whether you call that grind culture or hustle culture, that is celebrated. And when it is, you start to see what I've seen in countless organizations. Picture this, it's a Zoom meeting. It's 2:30 in the afternoon and people are off camera. And they tell you that they're off camera because, sorry y'all, I'm eating my lunch. I didn't get a chance to eat lunch earlier and I'm starving. Let me scarf my lunch down really quick and then I'll come on camera. Why do we do that? Why do we skip our lunch and neglect our bodies when we know it's a human function that has to refuel itself? And speaking of human functions, how many times have you or a colleague skipped going to the bathroom because you're just too busy? This happens more than I like to admit for my clients and maybe more than you like to admit to. Or maybe you've heard this, that you or others have stayed up till 3 and 4 in the morning, and not just an isolated time, but on a regular basis, stayed up to the middle of the night to finish a project. And not only that it was celebrated as a sign of being a hard worker, committed to the job, that you neglected your sleep and your well-being for the company, and then it got rewarded. If you notice in your company that neglecting the source and the center of your humanity, needing to eat, needing to sleep, or needing to use the restroom is actually a point of celebration, then your culture might be toxic. We know that no one wants to have a toxic culture. What we often hear folks say they need is a guide, a resource to help them know what are the different levers they can pull to make their company culture great. So we created one. It's called the Build a Great Company Culture Guide, and it features our 12 essential elements of great company culture with recommendations and strategies for you to begin today to make your culture better and to be the antidote to toxic culture. Go ahead and click the link in our YouTube profile and get that guide today. Number 4, perfectionism reigns supreme. When I'm with a group and we're facilitating a retreat or a strategy session, I often invite this one group agreement, which is basically first draft thinking is welcome. And my clients often say, well, Chrysta, what do you mean first draft thinking is welcome? And what I mean is it's okay to share the first thought that comes to your mind, that all contributions are welcome. And many of my clients have an almost sigh of relief because they're so used to having to be a hyper performer, a hyper achiever, that only perfection is welcome, that there's no room for any margin of error, that there's no room for mistakes because mistakes are seen as almost some kind of character flaw. That if you make a mistake, you're a bad person, and that the only way to be is to be perfect. So if you notice any of that tied to perfectionism, there's a culture of blame maybe in your organization, that's a telltale sign that you have a level of toxicity in your culture that's begging to be repaired. Number 5, there's a lack of transparency. And that word is tossed around a lot, but here's one example of transparency when it comes to decision making. How about in your organization when big decisions are made, there's not open communication about these decisions? People find out about decisions through the rumor mill. I can't tell you how many organizations that have come in as a consultant on, and people get information the same way many of us did in the 5th grade, almost by passing those little notes folded up like envelopes, note passing, and the gossip mill. If one of the ways that information, and I mean key information, gets passed along and throughout your organization is through the rumor mill, that's a sign that you have a toxic culture, because there aren't official storytelling channels in your organization to make not only transparency the norm, but great information hubs throughout the organization a norm. The 6th sign that your organization might have a toxic culture: your values are in misalignment with the way that people behave. So here's a prime example. Most companies have a website, and those websites have a section where you might find the vision and the values. I worked with a client a long time ago, and they had a value on their website that said mutual respect. And I thought, that's great. It's not just respect as a standalone, but that we would respect one another. I loved it. And then I go into the organization and I start to see the way that people behave towards one another. I saw lots of sarcasm. I saw lots of passive aggressiveness. I saw a lack of care and compassion for one another, and just sometimes a disregard for people's feelings. Everything about what I witnessed in those 3 initial observation meetings was an utter lack of respect. And so I realized that there's something that's not congruent here. You can't have mutual respect as a core company value and then allow, with no accountability, and I'm talking dozens and dozens and dozens of people, some in leadership, to behave in ways that don't demonstrate mutual respect. So if you find that your values are misaligned, that you have accepted behaviors in your culture that don't match the values on your website, then that is a telltale sign that your culture is toxic. A 7th sign that your culture might be toxic is that human emotions are not welcome at work and they're deemed unprofessional. Let me give you an example. One thing that I invite my clients to do is to create time for storytelling, for relationship building, and team bonding. And you can do that in very simple ways, like having an icebreaker at the top of your meetings when you can ask people, how are you doing today? Now, that is a question that's going to elicit a wide spectrum of answers. I'm all right, I'm busy, I'm tired, really hungry, thinking about going to the movies tonight. And sometimes those answers are very short, I'm all right. And sometimes those answers, if someone feels comfortable, they might elicit a little bit more truth. They might elicit a little bit more emotion, like, I'm kind of in the dumps today. I'm not feeling too great. Or, I'm still grieving the loss of my mom. Or recently, maybe last year, someone said, I'm so excited we got Taylor Swift concert tickets. And any stretch of emotion that wasn't just right down the middle, kind of flat affect, it wasn't well received. People who were excited, jovially excited, talking about Taylor Swift concerts kind of got side-eyed. And then those folks who were sharing about grief or that they weren't feeling too well or they were a little sad also got, in the comments, okay, Eeyore, why are you bringing the meeting down? But the question was asked, how are you doing today? And what that signals is, we only care how you're doing today if your answer is not the real answer or it's short. I'm okay, good, busy, focused. And so that's a really great way to know if your culture is inviting people to be whole human beings and share the full spectrum of emotions. So there you have it. Those are 7 signs that your culture might be toxic. I'd love to know if you've seen any of these signs in your workplace, whether you work there now or maybe a workplace in the past. So comment below, let me know what you think. Maybe there's other signs of toxic culture that you've seen. These are not all of them, these are just 7. Love to hear your thoughts below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.